Today, I am excited to have a really good friend of mine. His name is Kasey, which
Hey,
I think a lot of you guys know Kasey. Kasey used to actually work at our church. Kasey, thanks for being with us.
blessing. It's an honor. Love you all.
So, I wanted to start out with our first question here, which is Kasey, how do you feel about kind of what is going on in our world in relation to the protests, in relation to police brutality?
This has been a really emotionally exhausting time for, I think, pretty much anybody that's plugged into the world in any way. It has been intriguing to watch everything progress and unfold, and very interesting to feel such a vested interest in the way that things turn out at the end of this. We're at a really tumultuous moment in our culture. There are such strong polarizing sides politically, socially, ideologically, and all that tumult, all that boiling up, and all of that difficult energy that's in our culture right now is definitely hard and definitely, I think, uncomfortable for most of us. And it's combinations of interesting, exciting, scary, in moments of uncertainty and in moments of chaos. That is an indicator that there's change that's occurring, sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better. I find myself really hopeful that we'll see some things get better, even though I know we live in a world that ultimately has a destiny of not being so great until Jesus returns and really makes it good. But I think all that is to say, like, this is so complex. It's complex at a sociological, societal level, but it's also complex, like, at the intersection of who I am as an individual. I want to see the world work better for more people. And I want to see us as a society recognize and understand each other better. But this tension is difficult. The country watched for 9 minutes as a man was murdered, right? As a knee was on his neck. Completely brutal, completely unreasonable, unjustifiable. That has been a catalytic point for a lot of people to recognize that there's at least something wrong. People watched it. And you could say whatever you want about the surrounding circumstances, but nobody could watch that video and say that that made sense what that man did. And that, I think, has just catapulted us into this moment culturally. Like, I've seen a lot of really angry people, and like, anger is a thing. People can be angry, and anger is not a sin in of itself, right? The Bible says, be angry and do not sin. And so there's stuff to be angry about, but then knowing how to navigate that space it's not easy. I mean, I'm not just talking about the rioters and the looters and stuff, those who are taking peaceful protests and subverting them for whatever reason. Most anybody that is going to be hearing this can agree that that shouldn't be going on.
Yeah.
But it's also people who are screaming at those they view as the opposition and boxing them into a place where they personally feel attacked, not invited along to become more educated, not necessarily invited along to abandon certain ignorances and recognize with compassion that there's more going on, but screamed at, made to be fools, characterized as racist, characterized as whatever else. And like, there are real racists in the world, and there are definitely racist institutes.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, like, I feel like there is in our culture today, there's almost like this shaming to people in some ways just being vulnerable about how they feel about this.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I feel like as we've been having this conversation as a group, it's almost scary to speak out and say, and to be honest, like last week we talked about our own blind spots. Scary to say, I might be ignorant in this way, or I might look at this wrong. It has made it really hard to have honest conversations in our country. Everything is boiling to the surface. Like, all the issues are boiling under this pandemic, and it's not that these issues weren't there before, it's that now they are just hot. I was curious, like, how you have actually experienced racism before all of this boiled to the surface. How have you experienced racism in your own life?
I would love to speak to that. Let me start by saying the question you're asking me and the way I'm going to answer is stuff that in my life I have been very hesitant to bring up for a number of reasons. One, I'm not the kind of person that really likes to dwell in a victimhood mentality. I'm afraid of being seen that way. I also have been afraid of looking like I'm just an angry Black man who's just making problems where there aren't any. And there have been so many conversations that approach this topic where I just feel a knot build up in my stomach because I'm afraid I'm going to say something that is my real experience and that somebody is going to reject it because it doesn't line up with their experience and it's inconvenient for them to hear it. These are things that I think a lot of people haven't known that I went through because it just wasn't stuff that I was broadcasting. One thing that you got to know about me is my mom is white. My biological father is Black. Genetically, I am as white as I am Black. In spite of the fact that I am as white as I am Black, I'm a Black man. Not because I decided I'm a Black man, but because that is how I know I'm always seen. I have no problem with that. That's a good thing, just as it's good to be any other race. It's very interesting that because that's part of who I am, that society has decided that's all of who I am. From a young age, I was forced to consider my race in so many situations. Not because I wanted to, not because I was inclined to do that, but it was constantly brought up to me. Oh, we're gonna play basketball. Kasey, come be on our team. You're Black, you're probably really good, right? And it's like, that's great. That seems really nice until I start playing and they realize, wait, he's not good at basketball. I got a defective one. What in the world? Or like I were running in PE and I, finished our race first. It's like, oh, well, you're Black. Of course you won. It's like, oh, okay, I guess. Like, what's that really mean? Like taking away the merit of what I did because it's just because I'm Black. People you're not interested in dating telling you that they wouldn't date you because you're Black. Or people, it's actually even more painful when somebody you are interested in dating tells you that they would never date a Black person. One guy saying, oh, Kasey, I bet you're the smartest Black person in our school. Like, that's a really weird categorization, okay? And then proceeded to ask me and the only other Black person in the classroom what our GPAs were so they could compare. I'm not even saying those situations were inherently racist, like, oh, I hate Black people. It was more, I'm constantly being reminded of the color of my skin, and that causes people to categorize me differently. Yeah. And so it's a weird mentality that I never wanted for myself or asked for. But since I came to know that it was glaringly obvious that people considered this in the way they looked at me, that it was just a natural adaptation for me to consider it too. But more harmful things were like, running into people saying that, oh, you're an ugly monkey and you're stupid because you came from Africa. Like, wow, just heinous things. I remember being horrified, heartbroken, and disgusted, and like just being really broken in my heart, learning that there were people that had those opinions. And what was strange is the older I got, the more I was awakened to and encountered and was not sheltered from people's racially charged ideologies. One more blatant example of racism I experienced in my life was when I was doing a show. I was doing this musical fundraiser, and it was a show all about love. It was all about like relationships and romance and marriage and all this stuff. And the way it worked is we got cast in the show, and then as we went on, we were casted for specific parts. And I quickly realized that I was being asked to read for less parts than some of my other peers. And so I brought up to the director, just advocating for myself, hey, did you want me to read for this part at all? You had me do like one time, a long time ago, or do you want me to sing for any of these parts? Just let me know. Was, I guess, kind enough to be honest and said, yeah, I actually don't think that I'll use you in any of those parts because you'd be cast across from a white girl, and I just don't think that would go over very well with our donors. They probably aren't going to feel comfortable seeing like a white woman and a Black man in a really romantic situation. And at that time, like, this was the thing that I wanted to do. Like, I still thought maybe I'll do theater. Like, I was at school studying theater. Like, this was literally me being denied room in my potential career because of a mentality that this man either carried himself or assumed that other people were going to carry. Yes. And that was just overt. I shared
Yeah.
that with my cast members, who were some of my good friends at the time, and they were all offended by it. They all thought it was messed up, but none of us said anything to the director. Realizing that there are people out there that see me as a Black man first, and that influences the way they're going to approach me and the things that they're going to say, do, cooperate in or not, or whatever. It just showed me, okay, there are a lot of people. I don't know who those people all are going to be, but there are a
Yeah.
lot of people that are going to put me in a box off the bat because of what they think they know about me. One interesting manifestation of just my relationship to race was my first year moving to Oregon. Within a year of moving to Oregon, I was pulled over 18 times.
18.
And 18, maybe 17, but yeah, something like 18 within the first year.
I mean,
Uh,
five would have been too many.
yeah,
I'll give perspective. In my first year of living in Oregon, I was pulled over once, and it's because I was speeding.
18 times, never got a ticket once because I wasn't doing anything. I think the worst thing that I did was I turned into the far lane when I was going left. But the story usually went like this: Hey, what are you doing out here tonight? What's going on? What are you up to? Where are you going? Saw you, and so we just would have a little conversation, tell them what I was doing, and they'd send me on my way. And okay, so I'm not saying that those cops were like racist. I don't know that. I wouldn't say that. I had Florida plates, like maybe having out of state plates contributed to it. I really am not sure. Okay, so actually none of them were me being pulled over. One time, I was just dropping off my then girlfriend, now wife, Michaela, and so pulled in. We got out. We were in the kitchen talking to her friends, and one of her friends looks out the window and says, Kasey, there are police searching your car right now. And so like I walk out, I'm like, oh, officers, what's going on? It's like, oh, we saw you pull in here and we just wanted to see what was going on, wanted to search your vehicle. And it's like, okay, here you go. Let them do what they needed to do. And they went on their way. Another situation during that time period when I was in that first year, I was dating Michaela. We were driving together. I got pulled over. But for Michaela, it was unusual enough that she noted it and remembered it and brought it up to me like a month or so ago. That, as the officer was like asking me, what I was doing, all this, one of the officers asked her, do you feel safe? Are you here against your will? Like, are you okay? And that really, I didn't hear that. And I think that was a protection from God that I didn't, because that would have really devastated me and made me very self-conscious in that relationship.
Mm.
But for Michaela, it was so jarring and unexpected because she'd never experienced anything like that. That's hard because I do not think any given one of those officers I would say is a racist, but there's
Yeah.
obviously something going on in the process that would cause me to have that almost hyperbolic of an experience. And that wasn't the last time I was pulled over. That's just how many times I got pulled over and encountered police officers, interacted with them in the first year of living here.
I don't even think in those situations that the police officers maybe even knew their kind of implicit bias towards pulling
Mm-hmm.
you over rather than pulling my car over, which had Michigan plates for the first 2 years that I lived here. There's a really interesting side by side here. Both of us
Yeah.
from out of state. Both of us are the same age. I'm white, you're black. But there was something in there that made them say, I'm going to pull him over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is why we need to have conversations about this.
Mm-hmm.
And what advice, I guess, would you give to us as believers, as those who say we want to love Jesus with our whole lives? What advice would you give us in relation to combating racism and hatred and ignorance in our society? What is our part? What can we do?
Yeah. There are big issues out here, but we've got to find a way forward. And I really believe that for us as Christians, that way forward is compassion and unity. I think that we need to be exemplars of what it looks like to be united across racial and experiential and socioeconomic and whatever boundary we can come up with. We need to be so remarkably able to be compassionate and loving towards one another and so united as children of God that when the world looks at the way that we are walking this out, they would be astonished. And if they're smart, take note and follow suit. I think that that is the best thing that we can do as Christians, is truly grow in our compassion and our understanding for one another and accept each other as brothers and sisters. Like, It's really good for our spiritual and emotional maturity, to be able to empathize with people even if we don't have the same experiences. I can tell you, I have learned so much about perspectives that I did not understand throughout this process. That the thing that we can do as Christians is be willing to see people the way that God does, whether that's a black person, a white person that we think is whatever, the guy who killed George Floyd, any police officer. We need to be able to see all of those people the way that God does. And God is compassionate and God is loving and he loves them and he doesn't want people to perish. And so his desire for all of us is that we would come to know and love him. And that we make it so much harder for people to do that when we're screaming at them and when we're showing them hate, when we're acting like the world would act.
Kasey, this has been a really cool opportunity to talk with you and to get your perspective. I appreciate you so much, man. And you're welcome to hang out with us anytime. We love you and we're thankful for you, man. So thanks for doing this. You're awesome.
Yeah. Love you, dude. Love you all.